Hey guys, Kevin here with etrailer, and today we'll be showing you how to install the MORryde cushioned fifth wheel pin box here on our 2018 Highland Ridge Mesa Ridge Lite fifth wheel trailer. So if you have a standard pin box and you experience a whole lot of front to back chucking, a whole lot of road vibration, let's face it, roads in America aren't paved with gold like they used to be, kind of like our back parking lot here. It does cause a whole lot of road vibration and shock, which ends up pushing it up onto your trailer, hurting the suspension of your trailer, putting strain on the mounting ears of your pin box, and then also it travels forward into your tow vehicle, putting more strain on the fifth wheel hitch, wearing it down quicker, and then also wrecking the suspension on your tow vehicle. So to solve that, MORryde came up with the cushioned pin box, which has rubber dampeners in it to kind of eat up some of that road vibration and shock and all that front to back chucking. If you look at the cushioned pin box, you're going to see that this lower plate comes down here, and then there's these four polyurethane bushings right here, and what these do is it just kind of glides back and forth. So this whole piece right here is actually going to move back and forth as you start experiencing that chucking. On the front and the back, you'll see that there is a little rubber strip right here, and what that does is it kind of helps bumping it out so that when this comes up too close, it's going to kind of push back on it. And then internally, there's a rubber shear spring inside, and what that does is kind of fights that motion back and forth and allows this to eat up all that vibration so it doesn't travel through the pin box itself.
One of the great things about this system is that it is completely maintenance free. With your typical upgraded pin boxes, it's usually going to have an airbag in it, which you're going to have to constantly monitor, especially with any kind of temperature changes. Anytime you go to actually tow, you need to check that air pressure, make sure it's right where you need it to be. There is a whole lot of play involved with that as well, because you may not have the pressure exactly where you want it. You'd have to get in, tow your trailer around, and then kind of play around and see what pressure it needs to really be at for a comfortable ride. Whereas this is just ready to go as is, because it's just going to slide on those rubber springs back and forth and eat up all of that road shock without having to do any kind of maintenance.
As far as installation goes, it is fairly simple. It is only 8 bolts, 4 on each side, but the big thing here is that pin boxes are quite heavy, so you are going to need a couple of beefy dudes. If you have access to a forklift and a pallet to kind of support the weight of your old pin box as you drop it down, and then also support the weight of your new pin box as you're mounting it in place, it'll make it a whole lot easier. But like I said, a couple of beefy dudes, you could really manhandle that up into there. So the first step in determining the correct replacement pin box for your trailer is to find out what the bolt pattern is. Now, on a lot of the Lippert basic ones that most trailers are going to come with, they used to include a sticker where it would say the bolt pattern right on the front. As you can see right here, it says LIPP 1621, which would indicate that this has a 1621 bolt pattern. Now, if you don't have that sticker, a lot of times on the sides there will be an RPO number or a serial number that we can use to communicate with Lippert and figure out exactly what the bolt pattern is. But if that is also worn away, or maybe somebody else spray painted over your pin box and you just can't read that label anymore, then we do have a help article which you can use. It's called 4 Steps to Choosing the Correct Pin Box, and what that does is it lists all the different pin box styles and then shows a bunch of different dimensions that you can take of the actual bolt pattern that's on there already, and then determine exactly what your bolt pattern is. To take it one step further, with our MORryde cushioned pin boxes, there are a couple of different weight classes. While all of those pin boxes are actually rated up to 18,000 pounds, the rubber shocks that are inside of the pin box itself, which help cushion it, have different weight capacities. So you're going to want to make sure that you double check with the gross vehicle weight rating of your trailer. As we can see with ours right here, it's 9,995 pounds. So we're going to want to make sure that we choose the pin box that is rated for up to 11,500 pounds. Now, if you are above that, there is one from 11.5 up to 14,000, and then 14,000 up to 18,000. Before we go ahead and break off our bolts, what we're going to want to do is just leave a little indication exactly where our bolt hole is. So I'm just going to take a paint marker and mark that out. That way we make sure that we're putting this back in the same spot. And while you're up here, you want to also look at your bolt, make sure that you know exactly what size the bolt is and the grade of the bolt, because there are different torque settings depending on what that bolt actually is, which you can see a little chart in your instructions, which will tell you exactly what to torque each of those different types of bolts down to. The next step before pulling anything off of your pin box is to first get rid of all the excess stuff. Like we had a solar panel that was on the front, and that's just a little bit of battery maintainer, which pretty common. The other thing is going to be I'm going to need to remove our junction box right here just so I can get my hand in there real good with the wrench so that we can get access to our front bolts. Back ones are a little bit easier because you can see them from right here inside of our mounting ears, but those front ones are kind of hidden by the box itself. So instead of fighting this, I'm just going to pull it off. Your experience may differ from this if it's not in the way on yours. Sometimes these are hidden a little bit higher up and not as much in the way. But we're going to get this taken off so that we can swap out our pin box. So MORryde lists in their instructions when removing your current pin box to leave the front left bolt and the right rear bolt in place. So just those two bolts, doesn't matter top or bottom. I recommend offsetting it. So if you do the top one on the left side, go ahead and do the bottom one on the right side. And that's just going to help support that weight until you can get something properly in place to support it fully and drop it down. But for the time being, we're going to go ahead and pop off all of the other bolts. I've got another set of hands inside holding onto that nut with a breaker bar, and I'm going to be using a breaker bar out here to get these off. So in your instructions, it's going to tell you to loosen up those bolts just to get to those last two, and then it's going to tell you to hook up to your fifth wheel hitch in your truck and loosen up those bolts the rest of the way and let it just kind of fall out, and it's going to hit the bed of your truck. I don't recommend doing that. You run the risk of not only damaging the bed of your truck, but also damaging your fifth wheel hitch, which is a big added expense for something that you could simply do with a couple of guys. So right now we are using our forklift with a pallet to help support the weight of our pin box here, and I'm also going to have another guy with me to help lower this slowly so that we don't run any risk of this thing just dropping out on us, because these are very heavy, but for the majority of it, the weight is really up front. So it shouldn't be too hard for us to just kind of pull up on this a little bit, get those two bolts out, and then safely drop it down onto our pallet. So I've also gone ahead and set a couple pieces of wood in between here just to kind of hold up that back side of our pin box as well. And now we can go ahead and start taking off the last two bolts. All right, now we got all these bolts out, so I'm going to lower down my forklift here and get our old pin box out of the way. So now we got a new pin box up. I got it on our pallet with our forklift, just like I had our previous one. We're just going to lift this up into place slowly. And like I said, I'm using that forklift, but if you had a couple of beefy guys, you could definitely manhandle this up yourself. Just be careful, just because this is very heavy, and on the MORryde, the front side with all the shocks and all that is going to be the heavier side versus our back.
Go ahead, you're good. Keep going. Okay.
All right, so I've got this lined up perfectly. I'll go ahead, I'm going to take my bolt, my lock washer. My washer is going to go on the outside here. Goes in place. Lock washer, and then our nut. I'm just going to get these hand tight for now, so we can get each one of these in. So I'm going to have my extra set of hands kind of lift up a little bit, just kind of not fully there in the front. All right, we got those two in. Now that I got these all hand tight, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, and then we can come back and torque down all of our nuts. If you want, go ahead and have a second set of hands on the inside. It makes it a whole lot easier. And we'll just go around, torque all these down, and then just double check them again. Now that we have all of our bolts torqued down to spec, we can go ahead and put our junction box back in place, hooked up to our mounting ears, and get our neighbor's solar panel back up on top of the pin box, and then we'll be done with our installation. So our neighbor's old pin box also had a lube plate on it, so we pulled that off, and we're going to stick that right onto our new pin box. It's just gonna slide up on there. And there are a few different sizes of this. There's a 10-inch and a 12-inch, and a few different brands that you can pick up here at eTrailer. Basically what this lube plate does is it just gives it a little bit of a barrier between the metal on our pin box and the metal on our fifth wheel hitch. It just helps it kind of glide up onto there. Instead of using a messy grease or anything like that, it is kind of gonna gum up the plate of your kingpin. Well, I think that about does it for today's installation of the MORryde fifth wheel pin box here on our 2018 Highland Ridge Mesa Ridge Lite fifth wheel trailer. My name's Kevin. Thanks for watching.